W.H. Auden was a highly political poet who often used his poetry as a way to explore the social landscape of his world during the interwar period and World War II. Because he lived in both England and the United States, he was able to observe two sides of a rapidly changing Western world. By looking at three of Auden's poems, one can begin to understand how Auden questioned his world. Chapter 1. The Monument. Auden often used the motif of the monument as a literal symbol towards the topic he was criticizing. Into this neutral air, where blind skyscrapers use their full height to proclaim the strength of the collective man. September 1, 1939. The symbolism of skyscrapers, these tall structural marvels, is used to convey the modernity and strength of the United States. Auden then flipped this on its head. By calling the skyscrapers blind, Auden uses personification to emphasize the apathy and disregard for the ongoing war that was brewing in Europe. In Auden's eyes, neutrality was only an excuse for hypocrisy after proclaiming the strength of the collective man. In the context of The Unknown Citizen, the poem acts a lot like an apathetic government report with its erratic rhyme scheme. For The Unknown Citizen, the marble monument that is being erected in memory of this man is not built out of respect. In fact, Auden goes to great lengths to convey the apathy of the state for the subject of their monument. Yet he wasn't a scab or odd in his views, for his union reports that he paid his dues. Auden's use of anapest in these lines provides an almost limerick-like feel that stands in contrast to the seriousness of the subject being described. Later in the poem, Auden uses a more monotonous rhythm to further emphasize the abject apathy provided by the state towards this unknown citizen. He was married and added 5 children to the population, which our eugenist says was the right number for a parent of his generation, and our teachers report that he never interfered with their education. By doing so, Auden criticizes how the bureaucracy molds its citizens into parts in its system, doing so by changing the meanings of the words, such as in the line that, in the modern sense of an old-fashioned word, he was a saint. The word saint isn't used to mean a holy or virtuous person, yet someone who fits the exact criteria of a sheeple for the society. And of course, the best example of this, the monument constructed in which this poem is built off of. Chapter 2. Allusions to History. Auden really likes to use these allusions to history. He'll often just slip them in like an epitaph on a tyrant. When he laughed, respectable senators burst with laughter. Auden makes reference to ancient Rome, aiding to the ambivalence of who the tyrant truly is. He does this as a way to create a timeless effect throughout the poem. One does not know which dictator he is referring to, and it creates this idea that dictators have constantly appeared throughout history, and they tend to all be the same. In September 1, 1939, Auden dedicated an entire verse towards the historical allusion of Thucydides. Exalt Thucydides knew all that a speech can say about democracy and what dictators do. Auden draws parallels between Hitler's introduction of fascism into Germany and the war between Athens and Sparta. He does this in order to explain how history repeats itself. The habit-forming pain, mismanagement and grief, we must suffer them all again. Chapter 3. The inertia of the individual. When Auden was witnessing the beginnings of World War II, one of the key points that he pointed to was the effect of the individual. Faces along the bar cling to their average day. Auden uses the metaphor of cling. There is often the idea that individuals must come together to create change, but there always has to be that initial person to create momentum. By using the word cling, Auden shows not just a disregard to start action, but an unwillingness to be that inertia. The idea of the individual later comes onto full display in The Unknown Citizen. Auden ends the poem with 2 questions. Was he free? Was he happy? The use of anaphora makes one question, why would this man not only participate, but become the exemplar citizen in such a society? Perhaps Auden is again referencing the lack of inertial movement within the people of his time. In Epitaph on a Tyrant, the previously mentioned line about senators also is an example of this idea of the inertia of people. For those senators to idyllically follow along with the tyrant's laughter is to be a bystander. By criticizing this, Auden perhaps sought to create change within society, to call out bystanders, and to be the momentum that created change. Conclusion. By questioning his world, Auden was able to unearth the problems and help create solutions towards society's problems. Perhaps even in this new age, one should strive to question their world in the spirit of W.H. Auden.